We're coming into a very critical passage in Romans chapter 11. As you know, we're going through Romans 9 through 11, which is the definitive study given to us through the Apostle Paul. And it is the antidote for replacement theology, particularly Palestinian replacement theology. And that simply states or espouses the notion that the Palestinians have replaced the Jews as the covenant people of God. Because of their longevity in the land, that trumps what God has made, decreed as far as a covenant with the Jewish people for a homeland. Last week we looked at the 4 admonitions that God gives through the Apostle Paul concerning Jewish believers and Gentile believers that are now one. He says in verse 18, do not boast over those branches, the natural olive tree, which is a metaphor for the Israel of God, believing community, the believing Jews of the day. Do not boast, he says, verse 18. Verse 20, do not be arrogant over your position. In verse 25, he says, I don't want you to be ignorant. Don't be ignorant of the mystery that I'm telling you. And be not conceited, he says. And then he comes to this very, very critical, the climax of this whole discussion. He says, Israel has experienced a hardening in part. That is, the Jewish people as a whole have been hardened partially. Now, there are many believers, many who have found the Messiah, who've acknowledged Jesus as their Lord and Messiah. But there's a hardening in part until the full number of Gentiles come in. So he's bringing together the idea of Jewish believers and Gentile believers. And then he says this, and so all Israel will be saved. Now, does he mean by that all Jews are going to be saved? No, that's not what he means at all. The scriptures indicate throughout both the Old and the New Testament that only a remnant will be saved. But also only a remnant of Gentiles will be saved. And the remnant of Gentiles plus the remnant of the Jews constitutes the Israel of God. That's who that is. It's not all the citizens of the modern state of Israel are going to be saved. That's not going to happen. But there is a day that is coming, and I think it's fast approaching, when there will be many Jews and many more Gentiles who constitute the Israel of God, that constitute the olive tree that he refers to here in Romans chapter 11. The olive tree, just a metaphor for the believing community, the believing humanity made up of both Jews and Gentiles. Now, make no mistake, he's not saying that we Gentiles are engrafted into the church. Again, the church is not mentioned till Romans chapter 16. But he is saying that we are engrafted into what the scriptures refer to in Galatians chapter 6 as the Israel of God. That's our true identity. The church does not replace Israel. But the idea of Israel, the notion of biblical Israel, believing Israel, is expanded now, and it includes believing Gentiles. So once again, verse 25. Israel has experienced a hardening in part, only in part, until the full number of the Gentiles come in. Not all the Gentiles, but there is a full number, known only to God, that will come in to the believing community. They're engrafted into the olive tree of God, the Israel of God. And so, at that point, all Israel will be saved. And that's the truth.